And not only that, but it pays for a lot of stuff. Theoretically, it pays for, I think it's coming down over here.
There you go.
What the hell? Alcohol continues to provide revenue for the governments in the United States. Every state taxes their alcohol, and the federal government certainly does. It's one of the reasons why they did away with prohibition was because they weren't making any money off of alcohol. So they needed it. They needed the revenue to support the government. You know, everything was collapsing at that point. Federal government taxes alcohol manufacturers $13.50 on each 180 proof gallon. Most gallons of alcohol are not 180 proof. Most of them are right around 80. So that would mean that they tax $13.50 for 2 gallons actually, because 180 proof is not quite pure alcohol, but it's almost pure alcohol. States average a little less than that, about half of it, $6.50. So if you go to a package store someplace, you'll probably pay a pretty good price for a fifth of whatever you're buying, tequila or whatever. And the reason is because of state taxes and federal taxes. Of course, when you buy a bottle of tequila, you're buying a fifth. That's 1/5 of a gallon. So you can divide all that by 5, and that's how much the state's taking out. That's how much the feds are taking out. About $1.25 for $1.25 for the states, and about $2.50 for the feds. Beer and wine are taxed differently. About a nickel a drink goes to the federal government per beer, and when you take the test on Chapter 5, that's an answer to one of the questions. 5 cents a nickel per beer. Wine is taxed by alcoholic content. We are in the United States. If you buy French or Italian wine, French and Italian wine have less alcohol than American wine does. Any 14% or less is taxed at 21 cents per fifth. 14 to 21% is taxed at 31 cents per fifth. 21 to 24% alcohol is taxed at 62 cents per fifth. Naturally sparkling wine is taxed at 67 cents per fifth. And then artificially carbonated wine is taxed at 65 cents per fifth. There are hundreds of different alcohols ranging from deadly poisonous to barely toxic. The alcohol that people drink is ethanol. In the laboratory we call it ETOH, which is alcohol, is ethanol. It's also called ethyl alcohol. It's also called grain alcohol. The next most common alcohol is methyl alcohol. That's the stuff you rub yourself down with. It's also known as wood alcohol or methanol. Of course, in the lab we call it methanol. Isopropyl alcohol or isopropanol is the solvent that they use in medicine. So when they rub your arm down to draw your blood or give you a shot, it's not ethyl alcohol. It's nothing that you can drink. It's not even rubbing alcohol. It's isopropanol. It's isopropyl alcohol. Butyl alcohol is not something that we see normally. It's used in industrial processes. It's also known as butanol. Any beverage with over 2% alcohol is called an alcoholic beverage. That's how they get away with all these cough syrups that have alcohol in them, or NyQuil has about 2% alcohol in it, has less than 2% alcohol in it. Dayquil, NyQuil, all those things have some alcohol. All alcoholic beverages contain ethanol, but they may acquire other alcohols in the production process. Additions due to production are called congeners, which add distinctive tastes, aromas, and colors to the beverage. And that's what a lot of people are after. They're after the smell, the taste, the aroma, you know, that kind of stuff. They always sniff the brandy before they drink it. And that's because they're trying to determine what congeners are in the alcohol. Congeners may be acids, aldehydes, esters, ketones, phenols, or tannins. Usually it's tannins. Some beverages add a number of congeners. Whiskey and brandy have the most, while beer and vodka have the least. Vodka is almost pure alcohol. It's almost like Everclear. The dumbest thing in the world. I know, let's drink Everclear. It has no flavor.
There was a friend of mine that tried Everclear and it didn't go well with his body. And he puked it up. And just to show him how lethal it is, I threw a match on his puke and it
exploded. What a smell. Burning puke. The more congener in a beverage, the more severe the hangover, and of course, he's drinking Everclear, which is almost pure ethanol. So, yeah, you burned up his vomit. Methyl alcohol is fairly toxic and has a curious affinity for the optic nerve. We're not exactly sure why. Ethanol has an affinity for brain tissue, but methyl alcohol has an affinity for the optic nerve. During Prohibition in the United States, some bootleg manufacturers mistakenly added methanol to their beverages to increase the alcoholic content. People would complain there wasn't enough alcohol in things, in the drinks. And of course, sometimes the result was blindness because it has an affinity for the optic nerve. Sometimes, in extreme cases, if there was enough methanol in there, it killed the people that drank it. Alcohol comes in three categories: beer, wine, and distilled spirits. Beer is produced when grain is fermented. Usually it's barley or wheat. Most beers are made out of barley, but some beers are made out of wheat. What is that? Shock Top is a wheat beer. Wines are produced when fruit is fermented. Usually it's grapes. That's what is the best known. But there's also plum wines and peach wines. There's also rice wines, and of course we see that in Japan. Distilled spirits are made from fermented beverages. I can't remember what these percentages mean. I think this is the percentage of alcohol. Whiskey, 40 to 50% alcohol, is usually 40 to 50% alcohol. Tubers or potatoes, usually it's potatoes, sometimes it's sweet potatoes. That's how you make vodka. It's about 75% alcohol. Sometimes it's made out of fruit. If you've ever been to Germany and had their schnapps, which I think tastes like, it tastes like licorice. I don't like that flavor. Palinka is a drink from, a very strong drink from Hungary. It's about 40 to 50% alcohol. You can make it out of vegetables, strangely enough. Tequila, mezcal, the Mexican drinks are both, it's actually a cactus. Rum is made out of sugar. Absinthe, I can't remember what absinthe is made out of. Yes, wormwood, it's made out of wormwood. Anyway, it's poison. It'll kill you. What, they all kill you? What am I talking about? 40 to 75% alcohol, depending on which one you're drinking. They can be made from fermented beverages. Usually, and sometimes when they distill wine, you make brandy. That's how they make brandy. And there you go, the distilled spirits, wines, and beer. 5 ounces of wine is about the same as 1.5 ounces of distilled spirits, which is about the same as 12 ounces of beer. So you drink a can of beer, you drink a glass of wine, it's about the same amount of alcohol. One drink of distilled spirits has the same amount of alcohol in it. Beer, the first indication of beer consumption comes from 10,000 years ago, so it's been around for a long time. That doesn't mean that you guys were drinking it. You guys started drinking this 400 years ago. White people have been drinking this shit for 10,000 years. 10,000 years. I keep telling you that white people are professional drinkers. They've had 10,000 years of experience. If it was going to really mess somebody up, they fell out of the gene pool a long time ago. I mean, thousands of years ago. So white people professional drinkers. We're professionals. I know you guys are like amateurs, the worst amateurs in the world. You guys have been drinking for 400 years. We've been drinking, well, 5, maybe 600 years. We've been drinking for like ever, you know. Beer is made from grains, usually barley, but sometimes it's made from wheat. Let's see, I'm trying to think of another wheat beer. The Blue Moon is a wheat beer. Okay, so what they do is they allow the grain to sprout, and then they crush it, and then they ferment it, and they mix it with hops and yeast. And that's how they make beer. Who would have thought of doing this kind of stuff? Ale is a type of beer. It's about 5 to 6% alcohol. Stout or Guinness, if you've ever been to Ireland or England, it's really bitter. I don't know why anybody would drink that. It tastes nasty, right? But the Brits just guzzle this stuff. It's brown. It's really dark. Porter is also a dark beer. Malt liquor, we have that in the United States. Colt 45, Mickey's Malt Liquor, Old English 800, they're all malt liquors. They've got a little bit more alcohol in them, 6 to 9%. Most of the beer that people drink, most of the beer in the United States is lager beer. Budweiser, Coors, Miller's, they're all lager beers. Interestingly, the only American-owned beer company is Coors now. Coors is the only one. Budweiser was bought out by a Belgian company, and I think they bought Miller too. So they own both. The two biggest beer companies in the United States are owned by the same company.
Did you hear what they put in beer now? What they found that they put in beer, the pesticides that keep the bugs away and everything.
Cool.
They're finding out that that is in Budweiser's, Miller's, and Coors.
Oh, okay.
And it's causing cancer.
Oh, okay.
I forget what that was called.
Pesticide. Good. It's better than rat urine, I guess. Or maybe, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about bugs, but I think I'd rather have the bugs than the pesticide. But that's me. Then again, I don't drink beer, so I don't have to worry about it. The other type of beer is Bock beer. It's a darker beer. It's an amber beer. If you've ever been on the East Coast, Hudepohl and Schoenling are both Bock beers. Most of the beers made in Milwaukee are lager beers, except for Michelob. I don't know. Once upon a time, beers were regional. So if you lived in New York City, you drank Hudepohl. If you lived in Philadelphia, you drank Schoenling. If you lived in Cincinnati, which they had a lot of Germans that moved to Cincinnati. So you drank Wiedemann's or what's the other beer? What are they drinking now? I can't think of what they're drinking now. Anyway, in Milwaukee, of course, a lot of Germans up in that area. So all the beers were regional. Falstaff beer came from Omaha. Anyway, of course they've all bought out all these companies, and there's only 3 major beer producers in the United States now: Coors, Miller's, and Budweiser. Wine is fermented beverage from a fruit or a grain. Most people think of wine as coming from grapes, but it can also be processed from rice, from peaches, and from plums. American wines tend to be stronger than European wines, as I said earlier. American wines have between 12 and 14% alcohol. European wines have 8 to 12% alcohol. Now there's a reason for that. The Europeans, the reason they drank so much alcohol, and because the reason they're professional drinkers, is because they couldn't drink the water. What was I watching? I was watching a movie about China last night, and the guy offered her champagne. He offered this woman champagne. She was a missionary, and she said, "No, I'll just drink water." And they said, "Well, the water around here is very dangerous. You might come down with typhus." And this is the way it was in Europe. The Europeans have been idiots for a really long time. They use their rivers, all their water sources, as sewers. So it's a great way to get rid of all their wastes. At least that's what they think. And so they've had contaminated water for thousands and thousands of years. The Rhine, the Danube, they're the Seine River. These are all the really nasty, nasty places. You don't want to be breathing if you're sailing down the Rhine River. It's not a very pleasant smell. So they contaminated all their water, and that's the reason they drank wine. But the reason it's so weak is because they just needed some alcohol in the water to keep it from being poisonous. So of course they feed this stuff to their kids. They'll mix it with something and give it to their kids. So it's a lot weaker. It doesn't have as much alcohol in it. Fortified wines have alcohol added and have 17 to 21% alcohol. Wine coolers contain juice and have around 6% alcohol. Distilled spirits are alcoholic beverages that go through a distillation process, concentrating the substance into ethyl alcohol. These spirits are almost always stronger than beer or wine. When this process was developed in Europe, the number of alcoholics on the continent exploded. If you remember, people in England used to drink mead, they used to drink wine, and then those crazy Dutch monks came, they invented gin. And at that point, these people started drinking masses of gin. And of course, gin has a lot more alcohol in it than mead or wine. So these people became alcoholics. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you like to look at that. When the immigrants came to the United States, they found it cheaper to transport their sugar as rum and their corn as whiskey. It's just too expensive sugar is just, it's too heavy. So you really can't do that. So they took all their sugar and they made it into rum, and they took all their corn and they made it into corn whiskey. And it was a lot easier to transport. If you had to transport if you're growing corn and you're on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains, it's a lot easier to transport it as whiskey than it is to transport it as corn. You can transport a lot more whiskey than you can transport loose corn. Alcoholism has been very high in the United States since colonial days. The Europeans tend to drink much more alcohol than people in the United States. Americans average 95 liters of beer per capita and 20 liters of wine. That means each of us get 95 liters of beer. A liter is a little bigger than a quart, not much bigger than a quart. So if none of us drink in here, then that means that somebody gets a lot of beer. A lot of wine too. Germans drink 131 liters of beer per capita and 22 liters of wine. They're the leading European drinkers. Brits drink 103 liters of beer per capita and 13 liters of wine. The French drink 40 liters of beer per capita and 60 liters of wine. Italians drink 103 liters of beer per capita and 59 liters of wine. So as you can see, Europeans drink a lot more than we do. But there's a reason why we don't drink as much as those guys. Once upon a time, we were number one. Damn it, we were number one. And then those crazy ladies told us we couldn't drink anymore, so they passed prohibition in 1920. And so for 33 years, 13 years, we stopped drinking. And now we're wimps. We can't hang.
Fruzon add something to that.
About hanging?
Almost. When we went out to trip to Europe, we saw one of the spots that everybody started talking. The ladies started talking were the Stonehenge, and they were saying it's like what made them a lot of time to make something like this. And the ladies from Texas, they were saying like maybe it's because the guys had too much on their hands and they wanted to get away from the women, so they had their beers, spirits, and made this
goofy looking thing.
Yeah.
I just read an article, they transported those rocks 150 miles from Wales. They cut them in Wales and they transported them to...
When you sit at that spot right here, you can see all these little mounds. And our guide, he and she suppose that those are probably burials.
Sure. Yes.
I was like, just looking at, there's like a lot of mounds.
If you go up to my part of the country, which is Indiana and Ohio and that area, a lot of the mound builders were right there. So, and they use those as burial mounds. Cahokia, it's 100 feet high, and it's on the Mississippi River. It's on the banks of the Mississippi River. And they built this huge mound. It's got like a football field on top. They could. Of course, that's not what they were using it for. Anyway, yeah, that's a burial mound too. So don't, if you're a Navajo, don't dig into any pile of dirt. You may be digging up somebody's bones or something. Alcohol is absorbed all along the gastrointestinal tracts. It's absorbed into your stomach, it's absorbed into your small intestine, and it's absorbed into your colon. When I was in the military, one of my jobs was collecting drug urines and blood alcohols. So we had this one guy came in, he was drunk as a skunk, he had a car accident, the SPs brought him in, and he wouldn't urinate. We couldn't get him to urinate, so we gave him water. It was the SP's idea. I had to go someplace. I said, watch this guy, I'll be right back. When I got back, they had given this guy water. Well, your stomach absorbs about 10 to 20% of the alcohol, and it absorbs it into the lining of the stomach. So if you put water in the stomach, all that alcohol comes out. It comes out and it starts reabsorbing in your small intestines, where it gets into your system a lot faster. So this guy was already drunk as a skunk, so they gave him a glass of water trying to get him to pee, and that water got into his stomach. That 10 to 20% of the alcohol that had absorbed into his stomach lining all of a sudden became a mixed drink in his gut, and so it got down into his small intestine and he passed out. He was okay as long as they didn't give him the water, but the water made him drunker, as strange as that may seem. You would think that it would not, but of course that's what happened. He passed out into the urinal. It was the most ugly thing you can possibly imagine. So he's standing there starting to urinate, and he just passes out. He plants his face right in the urinal. I know, it was nasty. Oh,
How come you didn't just draw the blood?
I did draw the blood.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, but that was for his blood alcohol. We also needed to draw, or we needed to collect a urine specimen for the drug test, the drug urine test. We needed to find out if he'd been shooting up with heroin or amphetamines or barbiturates. Yeah, so we needed the urine specimen. Anyway, passed out right into the urinal. He just dropped face down into like he was aiming for the urinal. Anyway, it's not funny. Okay, maybe it is. Young kid, like 18 years old. He just face plants right into the urinal. In men, 10 to 20% of the alcohol is absorbed by the stomach, whereas women absorb no alcohol in their stomachs. Women, boys and girls, not only the differences that women have long hair and boys have short hair, we all know that. Girls wear dresses, we see that on the restroom doors. Girls wear dresses, men wear pants. The other thing is that men absorb alcohol into their stomachs and women don't. Most of men's alcohol and almost all of women's alcohol is absorbed through capillaries in the wall of the small intestines. And this happens very, very rapidly. The more alcohol that's absorbed in your small intestines, the faster it gets into your blood. But this takes a while. Because of the different processing of alcohol for males and females, a woman who consumes the same amount of alcohol and weighs the same amount as a man will maintain 30% more alcohol in her bloodstream. Okay, so don't ever match shots with somebody. He's trying to get you drunk. And he's going to get you drunk a lot faster than he's going to get drunk. It's just the way it works. It's not my fault. I didn't have anything to do with this. Men are better drinkers than women are. Potentially, men have been the professional drinkers for an extended length of time. And women, of course, have only started drinking, well, lately. Women have a greater problem than men because women have a lower percentage of body water to dilute the alcohol. Women have less alcohol dehydrogenase in their stomachs to break down the alcohol. Women's hormonal fluctuations can make them more or less susceptible to the alcohol's effects. So if you're ovulating, you're going to get drunk really, really, really fast. If you're ovulating. Women absorb more alcohol during their premenstrual period than at other times during their cycle. You're also going to get really, 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 really drunk really, 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 really fast just before you ovulate, as strange as that may seem. So don't go matching shots with anybody just before your period or during, not just before your period. Just before you ovulate and just after or during ovulation. That's when you're going to get drunk the fastest. Alcohol does greater damage to women than men. Female alcoholics have death rates 50 to 100% higher than male alcoholics. So it does a lot more damage to females than it does to males. The alcohol that is absorbed into the bloodstream is partially metabolized by the liver. The alcohol that is not metabolized by the liver moves easily through the capillary walls and can enter any organ or tissue because the molecules are very small, they're water soluble, and they're also fat soluble. So this gets into your brain really, really fast, but it'll get into any organ in your body, including your heart. This isn't good news. Alcohol will readily cross the placental barrier and pass into the fetus's bloodstream. And oddly enough, it has an affinity, alcohol has an affinity for brain tissue. So it goes right to the baby's brain. So if it's going to mess anything up, it's going to mess up its head. It'll also mess up its heart. So if you've ever seen anybody with fetal alcohol syndrome, usually they've got a problem with their heart. The first baby that they discovered, you know, this has been going on for a long, long time. Well, they didn't discover this until 1980. They didn't figure it out until 1980. And the first baby that they discovered not only had facial malformations, also had a much smaller brain than the normal child, but he also had to have heart surgery because he had a bad heart. So not a good idea. After imbibing, the individual will have the highest concentration of alcohol 60 to 90 minutes after the last drink. Okay, so we're matching shots, and we take our last shot of tequila, and we're not really that drunk, but in about an hour, we're going to be really, really drunk. A lot drunker than we are right now. So we feel pretty good after that last shot, and we're thinking, geez, it's about time to go home. About the time you get into your car is about the time you get the drunkest. It takes 60 to 90 minutes for that stuff to process through your system and to get into your bloodstream. Once it gets into your bloodstream, now we got a big, big problem because now it's affecting your brain. Remember, alcohol has an affinity for brain tissue. So it'll go right to your brain. It goes right to your heart. It goes to a lot of different areas, but especially your brain. The rate of absorption determines the degree of effects, which can be influenced by your weight, by your body fat, by your body chemistry, by your emotional state. The happier you are, the slower the alcohol gets into your system. The more depressed you are, the faster it gets into your system. I know. If you're healthy, then you'll metabolize your alcohol much more readily. If it's cold outside, alcohol gets into your system fairly quickly. Last night we had a crash. We had a barometric crash last night. They called it a bomb cyclone or a cyclone bomb.
Yeah, that's what my dad was saying.
Yeah. Did you feel it? Could you feel it? Well, if you had to get up and pee like 5 times last night, it's because the barometric pressure crashed last night. That's the way the world works. This forces stuff into your system, and this is one of the reasons why your bladder filled up so readily, so rapidly. Most people don't even think about this kind of stuff, but your barometric, if there's a storm moving through, You're going to urinate more, and if you're drinking, you're going to get drunk a lot faster. As weird as that sounds. The colder it is, potentially, the faster this stuff will move into your system as well. But it has more to do with barometric pressure. Barometric pressure will force it into your system. So, those of you who drank your six-pack last night probably got pretty damn drunk. Well, I'm just kidding. None of us drank. Last night was a bad night. I mean, it was a really bad night. It was a good night for being feeling bad because the barometric pressure was so low. So if you had any kind of a reaction last night, then potentially it didn't have anything to do with what is actually going on in your head. It had to do with the barometric pressure.
What if it was like during the daytime yesterday?
Yeah, geez. I peed, and then I went back to my office, and I had to get up and pee almost right away. And my bladder was full both times. I'm thinking, I know I'm an old man, but this is crazy. I mean, who produces that much urine? Well, it's because of the barometric pressure. Just nutty stuff. Isn't it fun? So this is something that you need to think about. I mean, something that you need to be aware of. If a storm's moving through, if you've ever been in a tornado or a hurricane. When we were in Japan, we were in a typhoon. They call them typhoons in the Pacific. And wow, I'll tell you what, the barometer just went almost to nothing. And the pressure, like everybody had a headache, not me, but everybody else had a headache. You know, they're just, and everybody's grouchy. They didn't want to talk. If you've ever been in West Texas, they have a lot of tornadoes. Every time a tornado is moving through, the barometer just crashes, and you can feel it. And everybody gets real grouchy. It's not the time to drink. It'll get into your system really fast. Absorption and drunkenness can be increased by increasing the volume or the rate of drinking. So the faster you drink, the faster you get drunk. Drinking on an empty stomach that doesn't have any, the alcohol will not be absorbed by the food that's in your stomach. Using high alcohol percentage drinks. So if you drink vodka as compared to beer, you're going to get drunk a lot faster on vodka than beer. If you drink carbonated beverages at the same time, if you're drinking rum and Coke, or you're mixing your drink with tonic water, or you're drinking champagne, you'll get drunk really, really fast. Or if you drink sake, they warm it up. Tastes like yeast. It's real weird. Yes, ma'am. You have that look on your face now.
Oh.
If you warm your alcohol, it'll get into your system faster. You can slow absorption or lessen the effects of the alcohol by eating before or while you're drinking. Eat fatty foods because remember, it's lipophilic. It has an affinity for fats. So if you eat meats, milk, cheese, or any other fatty foods, then you won't get drunk nearly as fast. And this is one of the reasons, a trick that they use, is to eat bread and cheese, because bread and cheese has a lot of fat in it. You can dilute your drinks with ice, water, or juice. Screwdrivers, Bloody Marys. Okay. 2 to 10% of alcohol will be excreted through the metabolism before a metabolism occurs. And of course, if you've ever been around these people, and unfortunately I've been around them more than I'd like, you can smell it coming out of their pores. You can smell it on their breath. You can smell it. It's there. I could tell if somebody had been drinking before I got into the emergency room. You can smell it. It's in their sweat. It's in their breath. And sometimes you can tell how much they've had because of their breath. It's only 2 to 10%. It's not a whole lot, but it's enough that you can detect it. The remaining 90 to 98% of alcohol is metabolized through oxidation by the liver and excreted through the kidneys and the lungs. So it's in your urine and it's in your breath. Of course, it's in your breath. In order of oxidation, ethanol is broken down by alcohol dehydrogenase to make acetaldehyde. The acetaldehyde is broken down by acetaldehyde dehydrogenase to produce acetic acid. The acetic acid is broken down by oxygen to produce carbon dioxide and water. There you go. That's the way it works. Okay, people from Asia, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans, these individuals don't have as much acetaldehyde dehydrogenase in their system. And for that reason, when they drink, their cheeks get really, really rosy red. It's funny. I'm just not that funny, I guess. It's funny to me, okay? So they're sitting there drinking with Caucasians from the or African Americans from the United States, somebody from the United States, and they're drinking the same. You know, they're trying to match drinks with the Americans, and by golly, their cheeks just get rosy red, and they get goofy. They get really, really goofy. It's my experience anyway. Acetaldehyde is a substance that resembles formaldehyde and is very toxic to the liver. This is the stuff that we preserve tissue with, formaldehyde. It smells exactly the same, acetaldehyde and formaldehyde. They're almost the same substance. So literally you're preserving your liver. In essence, you're not. You're killing your liver with this poison. People that work in the laboratory processing tissue, and they're around this formaldehyde all the time. It's a carcinogen, and these individuals a lot of times will have liver cancer, they'll have kidney cancer, they'll have stomach cancer, because they breathe so much of this formaldehyde. It has been speculated that American Indians may have a high alcoholism rate and advanced cirrhosis because of disruptions of the acetaldehyde dehydrogenase and alcohol dehydrogenase systems. And we're not exactly sure why. There are theories out there that American Indians came across the Bering Straits from Siberia tens of thousands of years ago, maybe 20 to 25,000 years ago. So your alcohol breaking down process is very similar to what it is in Asia. And since they have a problem with alcohol, the acetaldehyde dehydrogenase, potentially it's in this population as well. This, along with the binge pattern of drinking, increases the likelihood of unfortunate outcome for drinking with American Indians. You guys are, like I keep telling you, white people are professionals. Don't ever match drinks with a white guy. They've been drinking for tens of thousands of years. You guys have only been drinking for 400 or 500 years. So don't match drinks with John Belushi. Belushi family is from Hungary. They're Hungarians. Hungarians are really good drinkers. I mean, they're like really good. Romanians are good. Eastern Europeans tend to drink a lot. And it's hard stuff. They don't mess around with beer and wine. They drink vodka and palinka and all kinds of horrible drinks. Individuals may use home remedies to keep from getting drunk. Aspirin inhibits metabolism of alcohol, and when used as a prophylactic to lessen the possibility of a hangover, actually causes the individual to become drunk faster. Once upon a time I had a girlfriend. I know. She must have been really, really ugly. No, she was very attractive actually. But she was a drinker, and that's one of the reasons why she was my girlfriend and not my wife, because she was such a heavy drinker. But she drank a lot, and she used aspirin as a prophylactic. Somebody had taught her this. She was also Mohawk. She was half Indian, half Mohawk. Kind of curious. Anyway, she used to take aspirin before she'd go out drinking, thinking that it would lessen her hangover. And she was right. It did lessen her hangover. Unfortunately, it made her get drunk faster, which was kind of interesting. And she would put herself to sleep every night by drinking as many beers until she got sleepy. Sometimes it was a 6-pack, sometimes it was a 3-pack, sometimes it was half of a 6-pack. It all depended on how tired she was as to how fast she got drunk. But one of the other things that happened was that she's taken aspirin practically every day. Well, you can't really, aspirin thins your blood. So pretty quickly, fairly quickly, her periods became longer and longer and longer because her blood was thinner. And she got to the point that she couldn't, this is during Vietnam, we were all donating blood. She couldn't donate blood anymore because she was anemic. Because she had thinned out her blood so much with all that aspirin. As stupid as that sounds. So despite the fact that she's a nurse and she has all of this medical training, she was really messing herself up. Her periods were longer than the time when she wasn't having periods. We were good friends, and so she told me I got all this information. Why do people tell me this kind of shit? I don't know. Anyway, I got the whole message on her period. As lovely as that is, I tried to tell her, you need to stop taking that aspirin, you idiot. And of course, she thought that she would rather have prolonged periods than have a hangover afterwards. That was her rationale. Anyway, the reality is that blood is metabolized by the body at a fairly steady rate. You metabolize about 1 ounce every 3 hours. That's about one and a half drinks. That's 1.5 beers every 3 hours. So it takes you a long time to get rid of this stuff. So if you're drinking a 6-pack, whoa, it's going to take you a while to get it out of your system. It's going to take you 12 hours to get it out of your system, to metabolize it out of your system. It takes about 20 minutes before the alcohol has passed into the intestines and has started to affect the brain. It's the alcohol that gets into your capillaries, and it's not absorbed in your stomach. I already told you the story about the drunk guy with who we gave water to, but you absorb all this stuff out of your small intestines, and then it goes right to your brain. Ethanol has an affinity for brain tissue. In most states, a blood alcohol level of 0.08 is considered legal intoxication. There is one state in the Union that just passed a law in the last election. Their legal drinking level is 0.04 instead of 0.08. That state is Utah. It's right there. It's right there. Where's North? It's right there. Not that far away. 0.04. How much alcohol does it take to get to a 0.04? Half a beer. Half a glass of wine. You drink a whole glass of wine, 0.08. You drink a whole beer, 0.08. So that's not a whole lot of alcohol. For truck drivers, it is half that level, and pilots, it's 1/4 of that level. If pilots have any alcohol in their system, a lot of times they cannot fly. They will not allow them to fly. If a truck driver gets stopped, and you see this all the time, they stop truck drivers along the interstates. They're doing two things. One is they're checking their blood alcohol level. The other thing is they're checking their load. Of course, you never think about them checking their alcohol level, but it's automatic. They check their alcohol level, and if they have over 0.04, they park the truck and they can't move, and they give them a ticket, and potentially they lose their license. It depends on the state. England's legal limit is 0.04. Norway's legal limit is 0.10. However, in Norway, if you have a blood alcohol above 0.10 and you're driving, you lose your license forever. You cannot get it back. If you have ever had a DUI in Norway, you lose your license forever. The rest of Europe is 0.025. Australia's legal limit is 0.05. Now this seems really weird because these are the countries where people drink a lot more than they do in the United States. So why do they have such a low legal limit for alcohol? The answer is because they have public transportation everywhere in Europe. You can go anywhere at almost any hour of the day or night on public transportation. They do have cars, but they only drive them on the weekends. They don't drive them to work, usually. If they have a car, if they can afford a car, gasoline is like 4 times more expensive in Europe than it is in the United States. It's crazy. Very expensive. It's one of the ways they control your driving, is by charging you so much for gasoline. Small amounts of ethanol or even infrequent bouts of intoxication have little, if any, negative effects. It doesn't hurt you. Alcohol doesn't always have to hurt you. It's the pattern of drinking that you use. It's the amount that you drink when you're drinking. No level of alcohol use is safe for someone who is pregnant, of course. Any mental or physical problems that an individual has can be aggravated by alcohol. Some are allergic to alcohol and its congeners, the substances that are in there. Remember, there's a lot of really strange things in alcohol to give it its flavor. And some of these things are toxic by themselves. Mixed with the alcohol, it's not any problem. But if you're allergic to ketones and you drink brandy, you may have an allergic reaction to the ketones, not to the alcohol, not to the anything else in there. It's the ketones. Some have a high genetic or environmental susceptibility to addiction. Some people have addictive personalities. Some have a history of abuse and addiction, and these individuals have to stay away from this stuff. I told you about my great-nephew who was addicted to heroin when he was born. This kid can never get around anything that he can potentially become addicted to, because he will. It's already processed, his brain is already conditioned for addiction. So he has to stay away from everything. What's the probability of that happening? If his mother couldn't stay away from heroin while she was pregnant, and his grandmother couldn't stay away from marijuana, what's the probability that this kid's going to be able to stay away from everything? What's the probability that the family is going to control his behavior to the extent that he will not become an addict at some point in his life? The answer is 0, because they do not control their children, this family. It's my brother's family. You might as well take a gun and just blow his brains out right now. It's going to be a problem. And I don't want to be around when it happens. But I'm really old. Steve's back there going, yeah, he's really old, he's really old. I'm going to be dead by the time this kid's messed up. And I hope he doesn't pick up a gun and start shooting other people. That's what I hope. Oh, what a mess. Alcohol increases the probability of breast cancer. So there you go. Therapeutic uses of ethanol. It's used as a solvent in medications because it is fat and water soluble. So it gets into your system really fast. You can use it as a topical disinfectant. You can rub it on your skin and reduce fever. You can use it as a pain reliever for nerve-related pains. So alcohol does that. It can be used to halt premature labor, strangely enough. So if you're someplace and a lady goes into labor, you can give her a shot of tequila. It's not going to hurt the baby at this point. She's about to give birth, so don't worry about it. But yeah, you can stop labor with alcohol. Of course, in the hospital we don't do that. We give them magnesium sulfate to stop their labor if it's premature labor. But you can do that. You can actually give them a shot of something, of alcohol, and it'll stop their labor. As curious as that is. I knew a chiropractor that could stop labor by adjusting women's backs if they went into premature labor. He was really good. Why do people drink? Well, people drink because they think it tastes good. I don't, but some people do. Some people drink because it quenches their thirst. Oddly enough, of course, alcohol evaporates, and you're not taking in what you think you're taking in, so you get actually thirstier. It's like drinking salt water. Drinking alcohol has the same effect. It can relax your muscle tension. It does. It allows you to relax your muscle tension. To warm yourself up, it dilates your blood vessels and increases blood flow to subcutaneous tissue, and this is one of the reasons why if you're ever around somebody that drinks all the time, they'll have a rosy red nose and maybe rosy red cheeks. They call it rosacea, but rosacea is actually a skin condition, but it gives them a red nose. Eventually, of course, if they drink enough, their blood vessels in their nose will burst because it dilates those blood vessels, and it'll burst, so they'll have a purple nose, which is always attractive. I think we all should have purple noses. Yeah, let's go after that. Red wines are full of antioxidants, and they work as an anti-inflammatory on the circulatory system. And this is the reason that Italians live longer than just about anybody else, because they drink red wines, and red wines are an anti-inflammatory. It's also an antioxidant. So, hey, drink a glass of red wine every day. If you can stand the taste, tastes like rotten grape juice. Rotten grapes, my favorite flavor. Have you ever bitten into an orange and it was rotten? That's what alcohol tastes like to me. It tastes like something that's rotten. Not fermented, it's fermented, but it's rotten. You know? 1 to 2 drinks per day reduces the incidence of heart disease and plaque buildup. It has an anti-inflammatory effect. It increases your HDL. It changes the interaction of the lipoproteins, your HDL and your LDL, increases your HDL and decreases your LDL. It decreases your tension. I told you I've got good news for you today. Alcohol is good for you. If you can stop at 1 to 2, then you're okay. If you drink more than that, now we got a problem. These effects are even true in most serious alcoholics, so if they only drink 1 or 2 drinks, like an alcoholic's only going to drink a beer instead of a 6-pack, then it's actually good for them, and it can help them if they stop at 1 or stop at 2. These people die from enlarged hearts, cirrhotic livers, and damaged brains, but that's because they drink to excess from time to time. There are health benefits of alcohol. In viable women, drinking increases the effects of estrogen on bone loss, giving them higher bone mass. Osteoporosis is a really serious for Caucasian women and Asian women. The lighter complexioned you are, the more problems you have with vitamin D and calcium and your bone mass. So if you're a very pale person, then they will probably want to do a bone density test. Alcohol actually improves your bone mass density, the density of your bone mass. 1 to 2 drinks per day lowers the risk of stroke. It dilutes your blood to some extent. Heavy drinking actually increases the possibility of a stroke. Whoops! Remember, that stuff evaporates, and people that drink a lot have actually thicker blood. And the thicker your blood, the more likely you're going to have a stroke. It can add to relaxation and decreases the time it takes to go to sleep. If you have a problem going to sleep. Alcohol reduces REM sleep and decreases dreaming, making the individual feel less rested the next day. So that was a problem with my friend, who was a girl. She always felt tired, and she always complained about it, like I had anything to do with that. Anyway, she had a problem. Chronic drinking or alcohol increases the risk of sleep apnea because you fall asleep in strange positions, and if you fall asleep in a strange position and you have been drinking, then you stay in that strange position for an extended length of time. Normally, when you fall asleep, if you start choking to death, if you start choking yourself, you'll just roll over. But people who are drunk, sometimes they can't move. They don't move very well. And this stuff is part of their problem. Not everybody has the same psychological effects of alcohol. It can depend on the environment used. If you go to the bar, some people feel like they have to buy drinks for everybody, and they have to stay up with everybody else. They have to if somebody offers them a drink, they have to drink it. The mood of the individual prior to drinking, like as I said before, if you're drinking when you're happy, then it's going to make you happier, and you're going to get drunk slower, as strange as that may seem. If you're depressed, you're going to get drunk really fast, unfortunately, and you're going to get more depressed. So it really doesn't make you happy if you're depressed. The general psychological makeup of the user, of course, if you're normally a depressed person and you're drinking to forget, it's not going to make you feel better. It tends to lower your inhibitions. In other words, something that you wouldn't do before, now you're going to do. I was thinking about this the other day. I wish I could moon dance. Moonwalk. I wish I could moonwalk. I can't. I wonder if there's a video that teaches you how to do that. I want to moonwalk. There's a video of a group called the Sorrells. They're not a real group. This is from Streets of Fire. Okay. And these guys are just bouncing all over the place, and I thought, oh man, I wish I were those guys. I want to be those guys when I grow up. You know, Robert Townsend, McKelty Williamson, Brand, and Stoney Jackson. Stoney Jackson's the singer. But he moonwalks all the way across the stage, and I'm going, oh man, I wish I could do that. Every time I watch that video, I get jealous.
That's a nice soundtrack.
Anyway, if I were drunk, I probably would try to moonwalk, thinking that I can moonwalk. I don't know how they do it. I have no idea. But I'd be moonwalking all around the room. If I learned to do that, if I learned to actually moonwalk, I'll do it for you. Maybe I'll ask my wife if she'll teach me how to moonwalk. She can't. It increases self-confidence, of course, because it lowers your inhibitions. It promotes sociability, so you're friendlier, potentially. It calms you, it relaxes you, it sedates you, it reduces your tension. So there are good things about alcohol. For someone lonely, depressed, angry, or suicidal, alcohol acts as a depressant, as I said before. So if you're depressed before you drink, you're going to be more depressed after you start drinking. It deepens your negative emotions with disinhibiting effects. It makes you more verbally aggressive, it makes you more physically aggressive, and it makes you more violent. I've never been punched by somebody who was not drunk. I know that sounds strange. Drunks always pick on the little guy. They never pick on the big guy. Drunks, they may look stupid and they may act stupid, but they're not stupid. They'll pick on the littlest guy in the room, which is sometimes a problem. It's not a problem if you pick on me, but don't pick on my brother, because he will level you. He cleans out bars. He's not a drinker, but he used to go to bars, and he would wait around until somebody got pissed, and then they would come and they would attack him, and then he would clean the floor with the guy, because he doesn't fight fairly. He cheats. None of that stuff. No, he kicks him right in the testicles. Well, I mean, he fought in Vietnam. He fights to win, not to be fair. Oh, he was terrible. But you can beat me up. I'm really easy. Little people can beat me up. Even low to moderate doses can impair judgment when driving and result in vehicular crashes. It leads to high-risk sexual activity. And of course, we talk about high-risk sexual activity so often. Neurotransmitters affected by alcohol. Initially, it causes a release of serotonin, raising your mood. Excess use depletes serotonin use, causing depression. The problem is that now, because you need a drink in order to feel happy, it raises your serotonin level. When you're not drinking, guess how you feel? Guess where your serotonin level is? So now, in order to feel normal, you have to drink. You have to be drunk. Well, not drunk, but you have to take a drink. The alcohol raises your serotonin level. So you have a superficially high serotonin level while you're drinking, but you have a superficially low serotonin level when you're not drinking. So now the only way to be happy is to drink. So you need the hair of the dog the next morning, unfortunately. Dopamine is released, giving a surge of pleasure. It's mostly your D2, but also your D1 and D3. This is in the mesolimbic reward pathway. Dopamine is involved, serotonin is involved. So it really does make you feel good. It causes a release of norepinephrine, resulting in positive mood and raised self-esteem. So it makes you feel like you can moonwalk, or dance, or all the women are attracted to you if you're a male, if you're a female. All the guys think that you're the most gorgeous person in the room. Metaenkephalin is released, reducing pain, so you become numb. This is why if you ever get in a fight with a drunk person and you punch them, a lot of times it doesn't seem to bother them, or what doesn't hurt them right away. It's like they have a delayed reaction to pain. Glutamate release is pleasurable, reinforcing drinking. So we've got serotonin, dopamine, we've got glutamate. All these things make you feel good. Endorphins and anandamides are released, reinforcing the drinking, of course. NMDA receptors are inhibited, impairing your memory, which is probably a good thing because you were trying to moonwalk and you look stupid, but you don't remember it, so you're okay. Your GABA is released, lowering inhibitions and slowing the brain. Alcohol and sex. Yes, I'm going to talk about sex. At low doses, increases desire in both males and females. So if you each drink a beer, you're probably going to be okay. If you each drink a six-pack, probably not. It can intensify orgasms in females. This is one of the reasons why some women drink. It decreases erectile function and delays ejaculation in males. Alcohol has long been mythologized as a sexual lubricant, though its effects should not always lead to this reality. Even Shakespeare used to talk about when you're drunk, men can't perform. That's what he used to say. Unfortunately, among adolescents, and this is really kind of strange, adolescents, and of course adolescents are the teenagers, they think if a girl gets drunk, she's willing to have sex, or she wants to have sex, and it's okay to force her to have sex. 39% of the males feel that you can force a woman to have sex if she's drunk. 18% of females, as strange as that may seem. So if you're drinking at a party and you think somebody's got your back, some females got your back. 18% of females believe that if you get drunk, then all bets are off. They're not going to have your back. As sad as that may be. 39% of males and 18% of females believe that it's okay to force a girl to have sex if she's drunk. She's fair game. High blood alcohol levels can cause intoxication, but experienced drinkers can mask the effects of alcohol for a brief period of time. Binge drinking is consuming 5 or more drinks in one sitting for males and 4 or more drinks in one sitting for a female. This is one of the reasons why the cops stop you. You're driving erratically, potentially, and they always do a breathalyzer on you. And the reason is because for a while, it doesn't matter how you act, because you can use a different part of your brain, part that isn't anesthetized by alcohol. So just because you're acting sober doesn't mean you are sober. And this is one of the reasons why they give everybody a breathalyzer test, not just the guy that acts drunk, not just the guy that smells drunk, but they give it to everybody. 44% of college students admit to being binge drinkers. This is the pattern that, well, at least on the northern plains, this is the pattern that American Indians have. They're binge drinkers. They drink on the weekends. They start drinking on Friday night. They try to sober up by Sunday evening. That's their pattern. 21% of college students admit to binging frequently. Binge drinkers between 21 and 25 average 18 binges a year. That's at least one, that's 1.5 a month. Binge drinkers between 18 and 20 average 15 binges a year. For many people who drink frequently, 5 drinks will not get them drunk. So it takes that 6th beer in order to get them drunk. Heavy drinking is consuming 5 or more drinks at a sitting at least 5 times a month. With heavy consumption, the drinker can no longer control their mood for alcohol, from the alcohol. The depressant effect takes over, blood pressure is lowered, motor reflexes slow, digestion and nutrient absorption becomes inefficient, body heat escapes rapidly because of chronically dilated blood vessels, sexual performance becomes unlikely, speech slurs, muscle coordination becomes questionable, alertness, of course, decreases. Okay, so you've got somebody that's drinking. It's this kind of weather. They walk outside. They've been gone for an hour. You go find them, and they're dead. They've frozen to death. Why? Well, they froze to death really fast because their body heat escapes very, very quickly when they're drunk. I don't know if you've ever been around anybody that has frozen to death. We had a guy that came into the emergency room. He was so drunk. He kept saying he was going to check himself out. He's going to check himself out. He's going to check himself out. And of course, we tried to keep tabs on what was going on with him. Car crash came in, and there were like 6 victims. So we filled up all the other emergency room, all the other emergency rooms. At some point, he escaped, took off. This is in Omaha. Temperature was like, golly, it was like minus 40, minus 60. It was really, really cold. One of those polar vortexes that come down all the way to Omaha. Anyway, this guy was only outside for 15 minutes. We found him after 15 minutes. We sent security out to find him. Of course, they were cleaning off the sidewalks. It was a really bad night. They found him. He was in a snowdrift. He was dead. He had frozen to death in about 15 minutes. He was gone. We tried to bring him back. There's nothing we could do. He was gone. 15 minutes. But the reason he froze to death, one reason was because he left his coat behind, because he was so hot. The reason he was so hot was because his body heat was escaping so readily because of his inebriation. But he was gone. He froze to death, and it took him 15 minutes. I mean, he wasn't gone more than 15 minutes. Of course, everybody got blamed for it. I thought you were watching, one of those kind of deals. Luckily, I'm the lab tech, so I'm not responsible for anything. High doses of alcohol, blood alcohol of 0.12, may cause mental confusion, mood swings, loss of judgment, emotional turbulence, slurred speech, loss of emotional control, disturbed REM sleep and dreaming, fatigue during the day, insomnia at night, bedwetting, which is always pleasant. If you've ever lived with a drunk, they wet the bed from time to time. Oops. Apnea in the form of snoring. Nobody snores like drunks do they? Maybe you guys have never been around drunks. Alcohol consumed at high doses rapidly can lead to alcohol poisoning at a blood alcohol test level of 0.40. This will cause a depression to the central nervous system. They will pass out. They'll go into a coma. They will stop breathing. Their heart will stop beating, and they will die at 0.40. Amy Winehouse, blood alcohol level of 0.417. She was dead. Even though she was alcoholic and had been an alcoholic for not decades, for years. What? When either other depressants are in the system, such as opiates or sedative hypnotics, metabolism is slowed and possibility of death increases. So if you're mixing your alcohol with anything else, especially a depressant, you might as well just pull the trigger because you're killing yourself. With novice drinkers with a low tolerance, the deadly effects of alcohol would begin at a lower level, around 0.20. And we see this all the time with fraternities. They'll have a hazing where they have these 18-year-old kids, and they'll make them chug-a-lug a bottle of tequila or chug-a-lug a bottle of mezcal or vodka or whatever. And all of a sudden these kids pass out, and they bring them into the emergency room because they're in a coma, and there's nothing we can do. We can pump their stomachs, but if it's 20 minutes after they took that drink, it's in their small intestines and there's no way we can get it out. That's where most of your alcohol is absorbed into your system, in your small intestine. If the alcohol is in the small intestines, not a damn thing we can do. We can try to dilute the blood. It doesn't work. And the sad thing is, they're still alive, and we're working on them, but we know that they're going to die. That's the sad part. We know that they're dead. They're just still alive at this point. Because as that alcohol moves through their small intestines, they will pull in more and more of that alcohol will get into their bloodstream, and all of that stuff that happened on the last slide takes place. All of this stuff takes place. We can put them on a respirator. We can give them heart massage. Doesn't make any difference. They die. And it's really a tragedy. Because the sad part is that we get them before they're dead. And you wish that there was something that you can do. But unfortunately there isn't. Respiration severely slows. The abuser goes into a semi-conscious state. Vomiting occurs. But that's the only stuff that comes up is the stuff in their stomach. And they'll vomit all the alcohol out of their stomach. But that's only 10 to 20% of the alcohol. The 80 to 90% is going into their small intestines, and it leaks in there. While their stomach will open, and it will go into their small intestines. It only takes about 20 minutes for it to get into their small intestines. The abuser may aspirate vomitus, blocking the lungs or leading to an introduction of the acidic substance, contaminating the lung tissue. We don't really have to worry about that because we know that they're already dead. The result may be pneumonia or death, of course, if they aspirate their vomit. But if it gets into their small intestines and they've drunk that much alcohol, they're gone. There's nothing we can do. About 1/3 of all drinkers and 2/3 of all drunks experience blackout. During blackouts, a person seems to act normally and is awake, but afterward cannot recall anything that was said or done. Blackouts are caused by an electrochemical disruption in the brain. Even a small amount of alcohol might lead to a blackout. Edgar Allan Poe was one of these individuals. If he drank anything, he blacked out. And of course he flirted with women, and he promised them that he was going to marry them, and he danced and he acted the fool, but he had no clue what was going on. Is this fairly common on your reservation? It was real common on Fort Weldon. Blackouts and brownouts. I mean, they talk about it all the time, and people will say, well, the only reason I was driving, I didn't know I was driving. I was blacked out at the time. Of course.
I think nowadays, though, like with the younger generation, I think the alcoholism is a little bit less compared to my generation and your generation and stuff. I think the younger adults are learning a new lifestyle.
Right.
And so I don't see it greater.
That's positive.
Yeah, and like even down at the dorm, with the dorm students and everything, there used to be like a high percentage of students that would come to the dorm and drink and be drunk and black out and everything, but now you very seldom run into a situation like that, and the people that are a little bit older, and so like I said, the younger generation is finding different things, and
right.
yeah, I think it's mainly drugs now.
Which is good news and bad news, I guess. There's always bad news with the good news. Okay. So with these individuals, even a small amount can lead to or for them to black out. Blackouts are considered an early indication of alcoholism. Partial recall of events is known as a brownout. And of course, that's what we saw up north. A lot more than down here. I haven't really heard that much. People tell me their stories sometimes. I got a lot of those stories up north, but hardly any down here. Why don't we stop right here? We'll pick this up next time.